in the first movie. So I will pop up the banners for the spoilers for those. I have my regular co-hosts with me, and we have two guest hosts here with us to talk about Twilight. We are going to go around clockwise. Everybody get to introduce yourselves and let everybody know who you are. Starting with Zara.
Hi, my name is Zara Hoffman. I'm the self-published author of 6 books, a young adult paranormal romance trilogy, and a new adult sci-fi romance trilogy. I'm the co-creator, co-host, and editor of the Writish podcast, and I am now the publisher and founder of Inimitable Books, which is dedicated to uplifting marginalized voices without pigeonholing said marginalized authors into writing about that trauma.
Hey. And hello, everyone. My name is Morgan Lee. I have a channel here on YouTube. I do this with Me and the Vixen Fiction and all of these lovely co-hosts. And then I also do the self-publishing tips and tricks podcast with Ben Pick and ST Houston. We have an episode coming out today. I think it premieres at 4 p.m. if you want to check that out on Fannon's channel. And that's about it.
Cool. And I am Ben Pick. I post weekly videos with questionable writing advice through running metaphors as Running to Write on YouTube every Monday night. And like Morgan said, I also do self-publishing tips and tricks with her and ST Houston.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chandra Arthur. I have a channel under the same name here on YouTube. I also write fantasy, science fiction, and historical fiction. Primarily, I also write flash fiction with Natalie Locke. Oh, other side over here. We have Flash Fiction Live on Saturday mornings at 8:30. And yeah, that's it.
Very good.
I'm the other Flash Fiction Live. The other. We make a whole. It's cute. The Natalie Locke, also writer Locke, spanning across like all social media, all that stuff, and you can usually find videos on Wednesdays and live streams on Twitch when I'm not doing Flash Fiction Live. But it's still Flash Fiction because I can't get away.
I love how we match because we planned that.
I know, we totally did. Yeah, and then actually I put my hair up too to match, even better.
It's a teamwork.
They are.
Oh wait, let me go get my glasses.
And I'm Nia the Vixen of Fiction. You are here on my channel. I host this and Author Tweeters React, which we will be doing next Saturday. And Zara is one of my co-hosts for that. And I also do a writer's wrap-up at the end of the month. We rotate channels. Chandra is one of the co-hosts for that one. And the end of this month will be on Sarah Cahill's channel. So are you guys ready to get into it? So I'm going to do the first thing first. Did anyone DNF the book? Twilight the first?
No.
Woo! Oh, wait.
This was my third or fourth time reading it. Technically, I DNF'd it because I just didn't have enough time to read it over the past week. But from the first time, no. Like I said, this is like my fourth time reading it, so no.
Excellent. Great. So we're gonna go liked, we'll go neutral, liked, and loved. So who was neutral, or we'll go disliked first. Any total dislike? Like this was a no for me.
Yeah, I'd have to say no.
Neutrals. I'm a neutral.
Well, I don't know where I am because I have pros and cons, so I don't know if they like balance out to neutral or if I should have said like negative or positive. So I don't really know. I'll say neutral for now.
Are you a like to neutral or like to love? Because we're gonna do like.
Okay, I don't love it.
Okay. Next is who liked it.
I like it now. I loved it when I first read it.
Fair. Yeah.
And
I
love,
disliked it both times.
Love, used to love, still love, always will love, and he loves. Love it. Yay, I'm so glad because I wasn't, with Twilight, it can be hit or miss. So I was like, I'm not sure if we're going to have a balance.
And those misses are wide.
Yeah, the misses, woo. Are like, absolutely not. This is terrible. Why was it even made? Yeah. So I've heard some things. But I'm glad we have a nice mix going on here today. And hello to everybody in the chat. Zara, you have the power. So if you feel like popping up some things, because I've already been on for this morning, so the eyes are not reading things properly. Like everything is starting to blur. I'm slightly dyslexic for those who don't know. But hello, everyone in the chat. Welcome, welcome. We are going to start with, we're only doing spoilers for Twilight, the first book and the first movie. We are going to specifically talk about the book first, then we will specifically talk about the movie, and then we will go ham. So if you're coming in late, or if you're watching on the replay, it will be timestamped. So if by some chance you haven't seen one or the other, or if you're on the fence about watching, and this is where you're getting your information about whether you want to continue, you'll be able to see the timestamps and not get spoiled for anything you don't want to get spoiled for. But it is quite old. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I think I was pregnant with a child.
2005 is when it was published. 2008 is when the movie came out.
Jeez. But some people may not have seen it. So we are going to do those for you. And we are going to start with Twilight, the first book. So now that we know where we stand as far as like, what did you guys think? Overall feedback, Twilight, the book spoilers only. I will go last. We will start with Zara and go clockwise around. Let us know, what did you think? And then we'll have discussions.
Likes, right?
Or you, whatever.
Overall, okay. Overall,
what did you think of the book?
Overall, I think the plot was very compelling. I think I probably read it in one sitting. And because I read Breaking Dawn in one sitting, and Twilight was obviously smaller. So, I liked the world, and the characters were good. Some were a little bit maybe got fleshed out in the later books. And there are definitely a lot of romantic problems. if you know, not a healthy relationship being touted as like the ultimate romance for many young teens at the time. But as a story and as a book, I liked it. I don't think it was the best written thing I've ever read back then. Definitely have read better written books since, but I enjoyed it as a book.
All right, Morgan.
Okay, so I'm trying to get back to what I was thinking when I first read it. But I read it probably right before the movie came out, because I read them all before the movies. I think I rated it 3 stars. Overall, I mean, the plot was okay. Everything was just okay. 3 stars for me is just baseline. It was fine. Characters, I don't enjoy the characters. I don't like Bella. I didn't like Edward. The only ones that I did like were like Jacob and Charlie, her dad.
You didn't like Alice?
No. I mean, okay. It was fine. That's all I have to say about my overall book impression. It was fine. I devoured it in one sitting, just like Zara, and I kept reading, obviously. So it was intriguing enough for me to keep going with the series. But yeah, it was just okay. That's all I gotta say.
Okay. My goal today is to not yuck somebody's yum. And as has been indicated by the 2 previous hosts, when I read this, I felt like, let me see my exact line. This is a story about a 90-year-old man gaslighting a 17-year-old child.
Yeah.
Is he 90?
Yes, when it was written.
It kind of goes back and forth
because he's 17 and he's dying in the Spanish influenza, which my grandma was born that year.
Yeah, so it was like, so he might be over 100 then, because
I think he's 100.
Fair enough.
Oh no, that absolutely makes it worse. But I'm just thinking, if we're gonna drag him for his age, I feel like we should do it correctly.
You're right.
Because I know in Vampire Diaries, Stefan is 117.
Yeah.
And the movie definitely dated it because they were just on the cusp of smartphones, and so they had the little flip open things. And
I love watching movies on their cell phones, and you're just like, "Oof, buddy."
because they were like right on the edge too. This came out in 2008, and like that year or the very next year is when the iPhone dropped.
I'm reading a separate book unrelated where they mention an iPod, and I don't know if y'all know this, but iPods went extinct about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
There were some that were still around, but Apple kept hiding it from their website, like not featuring it, and now like they're actually gone as far as I know.
Yeah, and when we're reading about how she has to turn on her internet, I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember this so well.
Well, it's like different series, but like 50 Shades of Grey, when they're like, they keep saying email, and you're like, first of all, you have phones. You literally have called each other. But also, when you're going to get her a phone, like, you get her an iPhone, but you have a BlackBerry, when we all know that, like, iPhone can do I was like, I'm sorry. Like, we have passed, by the time that movie came out, we have passed the point where BlackBerry was considered the superior business phone. Like, we were already in the point where it's like Apple and Android can do whatever you need them to do.
To throw that out there is that Apple just in the past, like, I would say 10 years, finally got to the level of encryption to make it an acceptable business phone where BlackBerry had that lockdown. They had the proper encryption. So that's why that deal took a while to finally uphold, because as great as Apple is, they were a little slow on the uptake. So just throwing that out there.
They did have breaches and things like that. And
yeah.
Other thoughts, Ben, before we move to Chandra? Chandra, overall, what do you think of the book?
I loved it. I have to say, a lot of it, I understand the criticism, but I also look at it in a very different context due to the way that I grew up. For those who don't know, I grew up in a cult. I didn't start reading fiction until I was a teenager. So this is one of the first fiction series I ever read. I look at it through that lens. So there's reason why I'm probably not as critical as many people are, but the series as a whole represents a lot for me. So I loved the books, and they will always have a special place in my heart. But as I always say with both Twilight and 50 Shades of Grey, leave me alone with my trash heap.
Yes.
Yeah, I think nostalgia has some power for me with that. I'm a Chandra. Like, it's got this nostalgia because at the time, believe it or not, I was not as outspoken as I am now. And so therefore I did connect with the quiet girls where things would happen. My high school witnessed me go through a goth stage. So I think a lot of people were afraid of me. And like, I wasn't dateable, but then also I'm not sure if I thought I had this rule or if it was just self-imposed and I blamed it on the rule, but I had the rule of I wasn't going to date anybody I went to school with, but that just because I knew shit could go down. But I think that's why I enjoyed reading about people dating like coworkers or dating people they went to school with. So there's some nostalgia there, but there was so many cringe moments reading as an adult, and especially as a parent now, and I got an 11-year-old, I'm like, no, get out of her damn room.
Yes.
Yep.
So, but it's just, life goes on, but I still recognize it from my teen self, and I recognize it now as a parent who would totally smack down with a vampire if I needed to.
Yeah. I think when I first read it, I liked certain aspects of it, like the whole vampire thing, the supernatural. I was fascinated in that. So the movie was getting ready to come out, and I hadn't read it yet, and people were talking about it. So I read it, but I was already way past the high school age. I was already married and a mom, and I think I was pregnant at the time. So I was like, a lot of what I was reading, I was like, okay, I felt like the reason why I'm so neutral on it is like there was a lot of character It's more of a character-driven story with Bella, where I read when I liked sci-fi and supernatural, I'm waiting for the action thing to happen. So I didn't really like the book until the action thing started happening, which was way like chapter 19.
Yes.
When all of a sudden she's being, hunted, that's when I'm like, oh, this is good. Here
Car
we go.
chases, cross-county road trips,
Yeah.
ballet studio battle.
Yeah, all of that stuff. That was the good stuff. So for me, I'm like, I just wasn't in a headspace where I could relate to Bella, and it was all about how she was singing. And then the gaslighting. I did like that they were trying to explain that he's 17 when he dies, and I guess he keeps going through high school. So I tried to reconcile that with him being like 90 or 100 years old. Is that they're not giving him the opportunity to maybe mature as much as he
Do
could.
we know what year the story was set? Like, obviously, we know what year it came out.
Bad internet, trying to plug into bad internet that year.
I would
Like
say
early-
late
early
90s,
2000s.
That
early
was many
2000s.
years, and that also depends on like socioeconomic
Yeah,
Also
status.
where you're located. They're
Yeah,
in Oregon, kind of ruralish.
Yeah, they're in the country.
Washington?
so
Yeah, they're in
I've
Forks,
had-
Washington.
Washington.
Yeah, because I mean, even where I grew up, you couldn't even get Dish,
Oof.
so relatable. Not the best way possible, but I mean, yeah, I don't think
It
that.
felt early 2000s to me. It felt very early, like 2000s to me.
But I also feel like in this context, wherever you have any book that relates to vampires and humans, there is that tremendous age gap. And
I feel like we should just treat it as if it's around 100 because I don't think I've ever read a vampire book where it's like, oh, they're only 90 or younger than that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
even in True Blood, I think Vampire Bill is maybe 150-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, he fought in the
was
Civil War, didn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was Civil War.
And then Eric is like 3,000. So it's like, you can't, I feel like when you're talking vampires and humans, that part is it's a given.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, like,
It's
although,
like already outside of like the normal human span. Like I know there are more people who are reaching 100 and like some people have like reached like early 100 in teens, but
Mhm.
right, it's just, that just goes with the genre. So
Yeah.
it's cringe, but if you're reading the genre, like, accept the cringe.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
your cringe now.
I think also there's always the dream, at least when you're reading these books, it's like if you think about the age gap, not cool, but I think the fantasy is that like, oh, if you fall in love with an immortal, they'll then make you immortal and then your love will be everlasting.
Yeah.
Yep. So then it won't
There's
matter.
that. But I also feel like it being from the teen perspective, where Edith is like, she's almost an adult, and there's that kind of I want to be young forever type of vibe,
And she also raised her
nostalgia.
mom. So she was kind of already an adult. So it's like, she's like, maturity wise, I'm already there almost.
Yes. And I think it speaks to that of like in the teen setting where you don't realize how far you have to go.
Mhm.
So it doesn't seem like a big deal because it wouldn't. And it's fantasy, right? So like we're allowed to indulge that,
Yeah.
but also know that's bad.
And her asking him to like turn her at prom, homecoming, I don't know. They were always the same to me. Like I never really cared about those events.
Yeah.
Like that issue is very much a focus, at least for the first part of New Moon. So like it's there, but it's really covered in the next book.
Yeah, you don't get much of that aspect of it. But yeah, it's so when you see him gaslighting, it's one thing when you think of a teenager gaslighting another teenager, but it feels like, and then you have to like take yourself, it's not, but he is an old vampire gaslighting this poor teenager. She's like, you weren't standing. He's like, I was standing way over there. Or she said,
right next to you.
He's like, I was right next to you the whole time. What are you talking about? And you
What
hit
an adrenaline rush. What do you mean?
You can look it up, which is the best way to prove that you're telling the truth.
On that side, though, growing up from my background, that was normal. That would be, you would get that from your parents, from your teachers, from your like everybody that you were around. There was some kind of gaslighting happening, so that part didn't really stick out. And I think that it's a lot more prevalent than people realize, especially from people close to you. So it doesn't excuse it. I think it does start a conversation about it, which is important. So just because it's a negative aspect of the book doesn't mean it can't be helpful.
Yeah.
Because
it's realistic. It happens to people every day, whether it could be with someone their own age or it could be with older adults who are their parents. So it's not like it doesn't happen. And I feel like for me, because like I said, I already was married and had kids. So I was already reading it a little bit differently at like late 20s, thinking, oh my gosh, he's totally gaslighting this poor girl. So I'm reading it already from a different perspective, from that angle, knowing that I've got a little girl that's going to grow up. And I think reading it now, my daughter already knows. She's like, oh, Edward was totally gaslighting her. But almost that fear, I think, for if you were actually a teenager reading it way back in the day where we weren't discussing, you realize it was gaslighting. Did that worry? I wonder if that worry parents that girls were going to fantasize about having a guy like this.
I was like 12 or 13 when I was reading it, and I was miserable in my middle school. And like at that time, like I would know when something was wrong, like in an interpersonal relationship, but I didn't always have like the term. So like him doing it, I knew was wrong. But then I had to also, like, when I was reading it, I was also like, but they can't be exposed. So like, I get why he's doing it, but it's like at least in like other, so I never read True Blood or watched it or whatever, but like in Vampire Diaries, they have a way to make humans forget. So they don't have to do gaslighting. It's just like we're literally wiping your memory of the fact that you saw it.
True Blood has the same thing of the glimmer.
Glamour.
Glamour.
I think that, I mean, what would you prefer? Someone to verbally lie to you or someone to actually mess with your head?
I mean, okay, in the world though, because one is impossible in the real world and one is like, oh, this could happen. This part could happen. And we're romanticizing the other parts that are tied to it. So I would be like, I'd rather have.
I think it's a great way, honestly, to bring it up if you're having a conversation with a young person who is reading the book.
I think now,
but
like at the start, it wasn't part of
at the start, I didn't see it as gaslighting. And there was so many books of Twilight, 50 Shades, the True Blood and stuff where there was always this person who was like in this authority, controlling or manipulating without really, like, because they cared, this woman always. And I think that's why that started this whole shift of like where that started to happen. And then I think the rubber band snap of that is the Me Too movement.
I agree with that. I think that part makes it really helpful. And I think to what you're saying about in all of the books, there being someone trying to manipulate the main female character, I 100% agree with that. I will say the biggest differentiating factor from how I feel about that aspect in Twilight versus something like True Blood is that in True Blood, and actually in Vampire Diaries, you have the ability to revoke someone's access to your personal space, where in Twilight, she didn't have that ability. She couldn't just say, I rescind, your invitation or whatever, and he would be immediately sucked out of the house. When he was invading her personal space, there was literally nothing she could do about that. If he decided to, like, go on a bender.
Snack.
Well, and then also, didn't he say at the end, he's like, no one would believe you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you take that line and put
It's
it
like,
in
okay, abuser
anything
language.
else. Yes.
Mhm.
And then he's shocked because she's like, well, I wasn't going to tell anyone. He goes, like, and that kind of shifts gears. But still, like, listen, when someone tells, can we go into, or I guess this is still overall, but I'm kind of going into specifics here of there's 3 things that just drove me crazy, and it's around the same topic. And I told Chandra this yesterday. I was like, if someone tells me, hey, I'm not the hero, I might be the villain. Hey, you really shouldn't be friends with me if you were smart and everything. She's like, well, let's say I'm dumb. And I'm like, oh, yeah, let's bring intellect into it.
Yeah.
But it's also like in
Then-
fiction, there's always the I could change him, or like, oh, even if he
Yeah,
is this
there's
way,
that.
he won't be this way with me. And it's like,
Oh, that excuse, like that. There's so many things when someone comes to light, and I was just hold on, let me finish. All right, I'm jumping everywhere. Third thing is where he says, all right, there's the villain, there's the thing. Oh, and then he says, I'm dangerous or something like that. Like he actually calls himself dangerous, and I'm like, if I go back to my teen self, and if a teen boy had said
the
this
cafeteria chat, it's like 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
flags.
if a teen boy had this conversation with me, I wouldn't have thought vampire. I would have thought, you already know you're a domestic abuser and you're not doing anything about it. Like that's where my mind went reading this.
Yeah.
So
And if you see, this is my second point that almost sidetracked me, and then I'll be done, I swear. But if you see a trend with when it comes to light that someone is bad in the real world, there is usually a track record and more people come forward at that same moment. And the waterfall effect. And so due to current events, and because there's not a track record, I believe he's innocent in my opinion. But it's that deal. And I'm just wondering what's Edward's track record, because we also get a little taste of that too. And in
the movie,
So
there's
there's-
some stuff, but it's not really in the book, so I can't.
Yeah. In the book,
say
it's
what I
more
want
like
to right now.
everybody just kind of avoids him, and it's like, why do people like really strongly avoid that whole group? They sit there.
Well, because
Edward
they
doesn't
always
like
say
anyone,
that they look weird and they're standoffish and they only talk to them.
but also they're beautiful, and any girl would love if Edward would actually act.
Oh, and there was 2 names. I totally forgot about that. They said the Halls, where they had like Jasper and Rosalie related or something, and the Cullens.
Yeah. So
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, Jasper and Rosalie Hall, and then was Emmett a Cullen, or did he also like have a different?
He was a Cullen.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think they were trying to. I don't know.
Make it seem less weird that they're adopted siblings, but they're dating each other.
they're dating.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's another thing where I'm just like, it's very tropey. And so I don't think it's fair to pick on this specific book for that, because like there's so many other books that like they don't even create that distinction. What's that one with Shadowhunter one?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Oh yeah, train wreck. That is a train wreck.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what I'm going for. It's like, if you're actually concerned about stuff like that.
Well, I think if we did a scripting the book on all of them, we'd have this problem with all of them, because I think we're like, why a paranormal romance, while cool, like has a lot of problems that like if you took them and took out the paranormal part and placed it in the real world, we're like, that's a problem, and none of it was talked about it being problematic when these books became super popular.
Yeah.
Which
that's what. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
Oh, I was just going to say, and part of my big problem is that when these first came out, this was really normalized, and you mentioned that before. But one of my specific points was in the scene where Edward admitted to sneaking into Bella's window and watching her sleep for months. That ended up with her apologizing to him.
Yeah, like
so. Yeah, but I also want to say, and just before y'all know I love the book. We already got that part out of the way. But I will say, while this was happening, I was actually in the process of dating and then eventually married someone that I mentally compared to Edward. So I just want to put that out there in the world.
I think that's the fear. I think that's the fear that, you know, we're gonna glamorize this type of relationship, and then your kids are gonna go seeking that out and think, oh, this is normal. Because
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But
not now. But
then I think
so. Back then, I definitely had. I mean, granted, they weren't people I respected in my middle school. So if they were like, "Oh my god, I want to find my Edward," I would be like, "You're an idiot," because also the guys in my school were kind of like already predators, and so I was like, I would see Edward and I'd be like, "No."
So I think water always seeks its level, right? So if you're not already there, you're not gonna go there. If someone had told me, you know, hey, this is a bad idea, I would have been like, well, you're a bad idea. I'm going to go live my best life. Like, it wasn't like I made this decision because of what I was reading. More like I was so comfortable with what I was reading because of the environment in which I grew up. And it was already normalized by my environment, not by the book series.
Right. You never saw a this might be wrong situation.
But also, like we mentioned it earlier, that like you would get caught up in the fantasy of like having an eternal love because you have an immortal lover and then you become immortal. And I don't think people, if that's what they were like then dreaming of and being influenced to dream, I don't think they're thinking about the details of what is actually gaslighting and all the things that immortal lover is doing to be like, oh, I'm human, you know, before that. Because once the cat's out of the bag, the cat's out of the bag. And then it's like, I want to join you.
Which, I mean, let's face it, like the characters, the men who are, they're actual predators, vampire, wolf, predators, apex predators.
Yeah, they got
and carnivores, all of it. But I will say, to me, in the book, not going back to the comparisons, but the overall book feedback, Jacob is just as bad as Edward.
Yeah, thank you.
He is an entitled child who wants the new toy
and assaults her.
I mean,
yes.
No one all over his
is a full sentence. And a non-verbal no is just as much of a no.
Also, I want to put it out there that when you, which he does this as well. Are we into spoilers? Can I say this? I'm gonna go for it.
Yeah, it's Twilight the Movie spoilers. So
yeah, in this same book, same series rather, he circles back to that, and he already knows how she felt about it. And he manipulates the situation so that he gets manipulated consent, which is supposed to make it better. So he doesn't actually grow at all from this whole experience.
Oh, I think the only one who grows over this series is never mind. I'll
also, speaking of world building and the character, we'll talk about some characters. Yeah, Jacob is one that was very good, at least in the first book. It wanted more of him in the first book than what we got.
So for world building, I'll say the world building was good between the book and the story movie. The hierarchy, this is where my nerdom comes out, and this is why I am fascinated by vampire lore, is because everybody has a different idea of what kills them, how do they get their energy, how often they need to get their energy, what is the hierarchy like, the politics, is there politics, are they advanced or are they just bloodthirsty like in 30 Days of Night, like what is intellect a thing, like all these aspects, which honestly, Eternal Life just sounds great because then I can consume all the art that I want to. That's my
there's I think we should talk about, like, in a lot of the vampire romance things that were happening, it was like Eternal Life is also eternal youth, but in Crimes of Grindelwald, which was a shit movie, you meet someone who has eternal life but is very, very old and does not have eternal youth, and it's like, don't want that necessarily.
Yeah, like they return later in life.
Well,
Or no, it's just like they keep being alive, but they aged and they can't die. So
Well, so I thought in a lot of them, like vampires sort of slow down. So there's a difference between, say, 100-year-old vampire versus a 3,000-year-old vampire.
or they're just frozen. So some of them they're frozen, and other ones are, we just really, really slow down our aging.
Yeah. So I mean, there's like Queen of the Damned style, but there's also like in the True Blood series, you gain strength, but you stay exactly as you were when you were turned. So like shave your legs before you get turned is more or less the moral of that story.
don't dye your hair right before your turn because you're going to be stuck with it.
Yeah. Right. Like figure out what you want. But I mean, I think stuff like that is the fun part of like thinking about the advantages and disadvantages of being turned in each universe. I think that's part of the fun of it. That's part of the charm of vampire stories.
So I found it interesting. This was a new take. I know that the whole glistening skin stuff, but there was
sparkling. It wasn't just glistening. It was diamonds embedded in the skin. Is how it's described.
But when you talk about how impenetrable their skin is, it kind of makes sense. There was at least some thought behind it. And well, if their skin's impenetrable like a diamond, what would happen if light hits it? Oh my God. And so I'm sure she felt very proud of herself for making that connection. Unfortunately, it didn't play well with the rest of the universe, which is fine. But I can appreciate the thought behind it.
Well, later they're also described as marble. I feel like a lot of the vampire lore comes out in New Moon, so I don't want to like say too much, but yeah.
Yes. I do like the world building, and I liked the shift from like the sunniest place in the world to the gloomiest. The amount of attention to what the weather is like and the climate changes I thought was really cool, especially since I have been to both areas and really enjoyed them both for different reasons. I thought that was brought into the story very clearly. And also, so I did not go to school. So for me, anything that was set in an actual school was very entertaining. Yeah. But I also moved around a lot, and so I was very used to being the new kid in like churches or like youth group or whatever. So that aspect of being like the shiny new, I thought was really brought out well and made it more relatable, I'm sure, for a lot of people in a transitional phase of your life, going from, elementary school to high school. Probably a lot of the people who were reading it at the time. I know for me, it was near then when I actually went to boarding school. So I did like that aspect of the world building.
Yeah. I like that it was from Bella's point of view. I was just going to say, I like that. Like kind of not to pull in Harry Potter, but Harry Potter, we trusted the narrator and everything, the point of view. And so what they saw, we saw. What they determined was the right route, we determined the right route. So when Edward was standoffish, she's like, oh my God, he feels bad for saving my life. I bet he wishes he never did it. We thought that. So, I mean, I think that part was well done. And the story flow, it had the, it wasn't episodic and everything. There was the chapters connected to each other, but still had the drama of he's there, then he's gone, eye color change, gaslight, almost get hit by a car, gaslight. I mean, it was there.
So I think the other part of this is to SD Houston's point of Bella being moved around a lot and always being the awkward kid. She's going through all of that when her mother is more or less a child as well, and they were buddy, and so she couldn't rely on her mother for good advice, and she also doesn't really know her dad that well. Like, even though he is a good, solid parent, he's not had the opportunity to parent more than a bit in the summers. So there's not that connection where she trusts and shares information with him. And then she also doesn't have the support of close friends around her because she's moved around a lot. She doesn't know any of these kids. They know each other really well. And now she's been put in a position, which narcissistic behavior, hello, here you are. That makes you ideal, as we talked, predator, prey for someone. And it's a tool that a lot of narcissistic personality types will employ, is to separate you from everyone who knows you, who is close enough to you to say, you're acting weird. Why? So, I mean, I think it sets the stage pretty clearly for the whole scenario to play out, which makes that part make sense. But I do also think it's important to call out those details and be like, hey, that's not, we haven't, where you been? Who you been with? Why haven't we met him? Kinds of things.
Right.
Yeah, I liked her point of view, and that POV did feel like a girl in high school who was new. That part I could relate to, growing up in military bases and military towns. Not only was I sometimes that kid, that the shiny new, but also I saw it happen with other kids coming into a school where the locals, the townies, were kind of all knew each other, and then you have the influx of the new kids that come in, you know, as their parents got stationed at the duty station. So that was totally relatable. I think some of the things so as I'm reading, because I'm that person who's waiting for more action to happen, and just her character and the focus on Edward was just kind of like not that interesting to me, because I'm always waiting for the action. So when she was saying things like how she falls a lot and she's very clumsy, at first I remember thinking, oh, they're going to say that she's got something, you know, that there's maybe a neurological or a nerve damage or something, some reason why she's falling. And then there wasn't, because I thought, well, maybe like I think bigger than what it is. And I myself, I have
trying to add depth where there isn't.
Yeah.
I'm thinking he's going to come in and his vampire power is going to heal her, like, or something.
Oh my god! And then him getting mad at her for being klutzy, like that.
Yeah. Like, if that's just how
Stop putting yourself in danger. I'm sorry. It's not like I tried to walk right in front of where this classmate is going to skid his car or truck or whatever.
Black ice, dude. Everyone deals with it.
Yeah.
So on
just because you can drive a car perfect.
On Barrett's comment of why is he in your room watching you for months, I want to say if you look at this story, so if you've seen Atonement and you know the cousin who comes to visit, who's slightly older than everyone else, if you think about the story, and she ends up marrying the guy portrayed by Benedict Cumberbatch. If you look at the story as the relationship from that
for people
side,
who haven't.
yeah, my bad. But if you look, that's been out for a really, really long time too.
Well, we're warning people of spoilers on Twilight, which also came out.
Chandra's gonna hold up her hand while she's talking about Atonement. Go for it. Hold up your hand, talking about Atonement. Here we go. Atonement spoilers.
Okay, so from that perspective, the character's cousin has a relationship with a person who is much, 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 much older than her, that's non-consensual and becomes as consensual as something that's non-consensual can ever be in the future, and they end up getting married, right? So if you look at that relationship from the outside, how does she end up marrying this character? That is Twilight, in my opinion, in a lot of ways.
And going on to, I think, Nia, you were the one who said that, how you wanted more depth to the story. Edward goes out of his way to say that he was attracted to Bella, you know, the way she smelled or the way that she was the only person whose thoughts he couldn't hear. And to draw a direct comparison, I'm not going to spoil it, but within True Blood, they actually give a reason of why Sookie is so important to the vampires. And here I don't know, they might do it in a future book, but I don't think that they have the same justification. It seems like it's just a part of who she is.
Yeah.
Part of who Bella is.
Yeah.
Well, there is a justification, not in the same way, but in that it's implied in the same way that they have imprinting, which is a whole nother sidebar. but that those kinds of things exist for supernatural characters, in that like for every how
when
many
we get to
in
book
1,000,
2 and book 4.
yeah, in any many of 1,000 people, everybody's got this one flavor of person that they're like that one.
Soulmate.
Yeah, and
Or
in
snack.
Vampire Diaries, in the books, there's a striking resemblance, so it makes the vampires like do a second take, and then in the show it's like, oh no, you are a doppelganger. Like that is, and that opens so many plot holes and problems and things like that. But you know, so there's always a reason that draws
Okay.
I was waiting for that
too old vampire guy to high school
the girl.
student.
It wasn't just an attraction, though. It was that she smelled differently and that she just her being like the second.
There's something that draws them to. It's not just like, oh, here's a teenage girl I can prey on within the story. I mean, if you look at it from the outside.
It's the phrase, looks attract me, but personality keeps me. Like, there's something about them that they can't control. They just are. And then they get to know them, go, oh, I actually like them on a emotional and intellectual level too. But there is always this like unexplainable pull, love at first sight almost situation.
I'm just gonna
which
say
I would say
soulmates
lust
are in the ever whatever series that you're reading for your niche, Chandra.
Yeah. And Richard had a comment about because of so many women swooning over Edward. I think that already happens. With he said, would it be the other way?
Jessica
Angela.
is played by Anna Kendrick, and that's how I remember it. But then the other girl,
Angela.
Angela. I always forget Angela's name.
So here's
what they're talking about, like how it, you know, Angela's like, oh, like I wish Dr. Cullen would adopt me because then I could like be paired up with someone as attractive as them, and you know, Jessica is super bitter that, you know, when she's like, no one here is good enough for Edward, and it, you know, so people want to be with him already in the book.
I mean, also I feel like the other side of this is there are people who write letters to inmates for said person. So like the people exist. I'm sorry about that.
People are
It's true.
Oh, and especially if the inmate got like a Netflix documentary or something like that, then it, like even more.
And normally the Netflix documentary already includes the fact that they've been getting fan mail.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
And as far as I will say on story flow, the story flow in the beginning, I liked that because you can really sense the dynamic. I think you guys were saying earlier, coming from sunny, beautiful, picturesque Arizona, and then going to very cloudy, and it's so many trees, and they're going over the bridges, and the water's gray here. You know, that I like that at the very beginning, but the story flow overall, because what I'm waiting for the action doesn't happen until like chapter 19. That took too long for me.
Oh, so, can I say I could have solved this entire book and everything, because the whole thing is Bella goes to Forks because she feels like a downer for her mom because her mom would have to stay with her, which by the way, she's like 16. Like that's kind of Home Alone range easily, like every once in a while. Or at least like emancipate from your parents and live on your own.
When you said Home Alone, I was like, the kid is definitely not that old in the movie.
But here's the thing. Did nobody think of, because Bella's pretty smart, she's like kind of self-taught, did nobody think of online education so that Bella could just travel with her mom and her mom could still be with the new husband?
You're thinking 20, it's too early. There was no online education.
Wait, she could have homeschooled, but online.
Yeah, she's going to be homeschooled by her mother who's like a child.
No. It's like a self-paced learning thing, like, and pretty much parents don't have to do much.
You're 5-10 years too early for this book.
Even with the one that I did,
homeschooling about 7 years after that, after when this book came out, there is a curriculum I want to be plugging out, but there is something. It's not online based, but yes, they could. There are books where they can pace themselves and graduate when they're done.
And then that could have solved the Collins issues of having to be
social with people. But I think it was
if
also
they were never around in the town, there would be talk. So
That would
they
be
try
worse,
and
maybe.
like
yeah, and I think it was a constant test for them, kind of like a work out your muscles situation, work out to make sure you're not constantly attracted, like, to human blood.
Jasper has a long way to go.
Barrett's
He's our
comment,
newest vegetarian.
And yeah, Barrett, I agree that so much of all of that just Edward's not here today. Edward's gone again. I'm thinking about Edward for chapters and chapters of that, where there's a little bit of bonding with the other friends, but not much. It's mostly just her thinking about Edward. All of that could have been chopped, and we could have got to the action part where the dude's coming after her. Like, I would have liked to have that in like chapter 8.
I think that's par for the course with the with YA, to be honest.
Yeah.
I feel like
You need the pining.
You got to check off pine.
Yeah, you need the pining period.
Yeah. Because
otherwise, how much do we know that she likes him? How would we know?
And I know we're not to the movie yet, but like every adaptation of a movie, it'll take something that's like, oh, this was really repetitive. You know what we're gonna do?
Montage.
And then montage, cut, we're gonna whatever. And I mean, I did get annoying at some point, but I actually liked, because I feel like very few young adult books actually do it, where like she's actually in high school. Like, even in my own books, the Belgrave Legacy, it's like, oh, they're in college. And then it's like all this stuff happens. It's like, oh yeah, we put in that you were on a sabbatical or something, or like a period of leave.
That I did well. I did feel like we were in high school with her. Like,
because I feel like most of the times in YA, it's like, oh, once this all happens, it's like, oh, like I'm leaving it completely behind. And then it's like, I feel like at least in a lot of series, at some point, it's like they're forced back into their normal world, which means if they failed their like school in the whatever year that they were in when they got introduced to the paranormal world, they're going to have to repeat that. And then there's never a mention of that either. And it's like, I don't think it was until like season 5 where Vampire Diaries was like, oh yeah, we have high school. We didn't talk about it since like maybe season 2, probably season 1. And it's like,
all right. Does anybody have any more overall feedback or thoughts about?
I'm ready to pull in specifics.
We're going to move on to the movie.
Richard's comment.
Go ahead.
My criticism of the fan base.
Yeah, I starred that.
So I think though it kind of pointed out the whole nice guys finish last thing. Mm-hmm. And in it, we can also clearly see that he's really not that nice of a guy. So
every guy who's like, I'm a nice guy, and then you say no, and they very quickly reveal it. It's like, see, this is why.
The only potentially actually nice guy in the whole book would probably be Angela's boyfriend.
I'm blanking on his name.
I don't remember his name either, but he was he did the school paper. He was like super into photography. No?
I'm looking it up on the IMDb. Eric.
Yeah, Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like he was like, when he was like, oh, I'm gonna do
I came running from the kitchen and couldn't unmute fast enough. I'm like, I know
it. and well, I mean, no, we're not talking about men, we're talking about boys right now.
Boys to men.
And, but like he was more like thoughtful and kind of sweet. But if we're talking about like the best character, in my personal opinion, in the entire series, it's probably Charlie.
Yeah.
Charlie was the most emotionally healthy and like grounded and stable person in the entire.
And Charlie, so are we talking about the movie? Have we switched to the movie?
We haven't officially
switched.
Okay, overall.
Are you ready? Okay.
Yeah. Overall, the movie was I'll say overall movie. I remember reading the books and then going to the midnight showing, and when Edward came on screen, the theater erupted in like woo and clapping and everything. Like, I remember that in my mind. Yes. I did not partake. Maybe. I might have, but it would have been like a FOMO partake of like,
you were swept up.
So I remember that, but I think once the nostalgia wore off and everything, and yeah, I was still into it. And also because of the changes made between the book and the movie, it was, I now that I'm older and I know what's good and how things age, it's so one-dimensional to me.
Okay, so
Character-wise.
yeah, I feel like the movie, the pacing was off, and the soundtrack was terrible.
But they had that Linkin Park song.
Yeah.
No, there was some of the music, some of the like the actual
baseball
like,
scene.
the actual
Yeah,
songs.
That was actually good.
I like the actual songs were good. I don't know why Tampax is here, but hey.
The top
actual
of blood
songs-
drew them.
I was about to say.
The actual songs were good, but like the
The way they paired
instrumental
The timing for the songs.
Yeah, it was
for
like, what are
where
you
they
doing?
were at in the movie.
Yeah,
It's like,
it-
am I supposed to be anxious or am I supposed to be jamming? What's happening?
Yeah, and some of the songs are kind of ruined now because the movie kind of got a bad rap and the songs kind of got overplayed. That now you can't like even. I think some of the songs were good, but I can't really enjoy them.
Possibility by Likey Lee or something like that.
I can't hear Supermassive Black Hole without seeing the scene. And like that was one of the moments where I was like, oh, I think it actually married well, but it's still like it's so entwined.
Like I see Debussy anywhere, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I've seen that in books where they mention him, and I'm just
Oh, so I feel like okay. So I grew up listening to classical music, and it kind of frustrates me because there's like 5 classical songs that are in everything. Whenever they're like, we need a classical song, and that's one of them, and I'm like, please stop. Please pretend like
it's
you
like
actually
that
listen to
Beethoven.
classical
Fleur
Acapella
de
Brant.
Fleur de Lis can be in everything though. That one I make an exception for.
I mean,
And Midnight Sonata. Those two.
Leave my good
Beethoven's
music
bit.
alone. I mean, yes, but I felt like the way that the in between music, like that, it's not actual songs, it's just pure soundtrack. I felt like it was misused badly, and it made the movie seem a lot more disjointed. And I actually like the book better because of that. I felt like they could have made the movie a lot better if they weren't rushing it.
And Ben,
I was going to say I actually like part of one of the big things that the movie did was that they set up the villains a lot better.
Yes.
So you have a couple of rumors in the book how there were, some vampire, how there were some maulings way off, and they might have been approaching. But here it actually goes through and shows the villains getting closer and closer to Forks. And actually, to counter that though, the main villain James, he wasn't imposing. There's a scene where he's like there with his jacket open, and I know I'm spoiled because of the Marvel movies where Andy from Parks and Rec got absolutely shredded. Chris Pratt got absolutely shredded to be Star-Lord, and even Paul Rudd got pretty muscular to be Ant-Man. But he's just he looked imposing with the jacket fully buttoned, and that was perfectly fine. But when it was just spread open, I laughed.
That and he's barefoot and then smelling the tree. Love that.
Yeah.
The way that they did the nomadic, like the cool thing is that they show, is it him or Victoria who steals Waylon's jacket after they've killed him? Like that was cool. And when you see them like kill a character that we like, even though it was like a name drop, when he's like, oh, like, do you remember me? I was Santa. And it's like, he seemed a little bit creepy. But it's like, you still understand that like Charlie thinks he's a good guy. So when he gets killed, you're like, okay, he wasn't like a villain who deserved to necessarily get.
I think you make good points about how the villains were presented in the book versus the show, but I totally agree that I think that Victoria played a much better villain in the long run.
Yeah.
Like she was more intimidating than he was. He just seemed more like a junkie.
But I think I think that was the dynamic, is that the three of them were all very different, but they happened to move in a nomadic pack. Is that James is an aggressive hunter, tracker, like he likes a challenge, and that's really all he cares about. He's like a jock, but dangerous. Although some jocks can be dangerous, as we know from certain college statistics and things like that. But then you have Victoria, who's like calculating, and she does her own thing, but she's always there because James is like her mate or whatever, but she's the one who's like thinking everything through. And then you have Laurent, who is like, these guys can go off the rails, especially James, but like, Victoria can get a little bit too caught up in him, and like, we need to not get caught. And he's the most level-headed, so I think he balances out the whole thing. But he's very clearly amused by like them toying with Waylon before they kill him, and he's like, "Don't play with your food," type of thing. So he's kind of like the supervisor.
Yeah, but can we have a female that isn't jaded because her lover was taken or something? Like, can we just have?
We're in the early 2000s. That's not allowed. I don't even know. Like, I mean, it's happened in like a few exceptions. I don't know.
I want to push back on that because I feel like in a lot of shows, a lot of movies, a lot of media, how do you really motivate the characters to kill their love? It doesn't matter if it's male or female. So maybe the trope reversal is having someone.
I mean, look at John Wick.
I have a problem with fridging in either direction.
Yeah. Like, and I mean, it's a thing, but I don't think it's specifically masculine or feminine that's targeted, because in so many things, it's like, how do you get a guy to go off the rails? Kill the love of his life, and it's like, can we just?
But I think there is the complaint that like women in media, like if they're a full-blown villain and it's not like, oh, I'm misunderstood, but it's like, I'm straight up evil, it's always because they were either completely victimized or like the best person in their life was like killed, so they're like, oh, there's nothing good in the world. And it's like, maybe we want a female villain who is like, this is my goal, or this is what I believe is right, and my actions are considered immoral, because we have male villains who are like that too. It's not.
What if Thanos was female?
Yeah,
that would be interesting to me more so. Whereas we had like,
where it's like where the female villain has a goal and it's at odds. And probably done immorally with the hero, but it's not just like, oh, I was completely wronged and I'm a bitter woman, and if I have magic, I'm gonna like use that, like Maleficent. I mean, not the Angelina Jolie version, kind of, but like, I
don't know. I feel like, I guess that doesn't really bother me as much, but part of that is more my fascination with like serial killers and stuff like that, where I'm just exactly. And I read a lot about that and have read a lot about it. So when I see something come up like that, where it's like, well, this person was completely victimized, or this terrible thing happened to them, I am interested in their response of how did they get to where they are. So I don't find that to be at odds with reality. However, in the fantastical sense, I can see wanting there to be something more for a villain, because there's no reason they should be tied to the real world causes of villainy. When it's fantasy, they should be able to be a villain for whatever reason.
Yeah. Ben, did you have any more thoughts on that? And then we'll do Morgan, then Zara, and then I'll let you know what I thought overall of the movie.
No. I'm really glad that the way the discussion went. So
good. Yep. Morgan, what did you think of the movie?
I dislike the movie. It's not like
more than you dislike the book, or
I think more than I dislike the book. I think the movie is like, now to me it's funny because I've been watching a lot of like Twilight TikTok. I started watching TikTok. I kept getting a lot of people reenacting scenes. So now every time I watch the movie, I see the person on TikTok acting out the scenes. But overall, I mean, like you said, with the pacing and just like the changes that they made from the book to the movie, and the acting, and just the whole package of the movie just was like and I don't know. It was just okay. So yeah.
Can I just say what you said about Anna Kendrick, though? Thank you to Twilight for giving us Anna Kendrick.
Well, actually, so my mom and I knew her from the musical Camp.
Oh, really? That's so
Which is-
cool.
Yeah, because it's based on a real creative arts camp. And so that's
cool.
where
I mean, the rest of us mere mortals.
Yeah.
um,
And what did you think of the movie, Sarah?
I like the movie better than the book. I'm just gonna come out and say it. I don't know how much of it is that I have aphantasia, and it was nice to actually be able to see these vampires being more powerful than humans, and it's not just like, oh, like I know it, but like I'm not really experiencing it type of thing. I liked the expansion of the world because we do see the villains approaching, and I the condensing of Bella pining for Edward for him not being in school. I think in the movie, but this is also in the book, in my opinion, is that like a lot of the other characters are flat, and like, they do get better as the series goes on. But I don't see that as a fault of the movie, the same way that I don't see Kristen Stewart's acting as Bella a fault of her, because everyone was ragging on Kristen Stewart, and I'm like, she was in like some spy type of Disney original movie, and she was like very emotive there. And then actually what I had seen her in before Twilight was Speak, which is not a book that a 6-year-old should be reading.
Yeah.
And in that movie, and she's like very silent there. And then as we've seen since Twilight, in Charlie's Angels and other things. So when people knock the acting in Twilight, I'm like, if you read the books, you would have realized that like they're doing their job.
They're doing exactly what
they're doing their job a little bit too well. The same way that like people hate Lena Headey, who played Cersei Lannister, where it's like they become so enmeshed with the character until they do something else that's like huge, like
yes.
Kristen Stewart playing Diana and Robert Pattinson now being the Batman.
The Batman.
So I like the movie better. I think it had better pacing. I do wish that there was more saturation in the film, but I have that same complaint about like all the later Harry Potter films and, almost every supernatural show that I've seen where I'm like, I know it needs to be dark, but like your viewers still need to see what's happening because you put money into this production. Otherwise you could just put up a black screen.
Yeah. I also liked the movie better, and it was that same thing because of the pacing, because of where the villains are introduced in a very mysterious way. Very early on, there's something else ominous that's going on besides just Bella meeting Edward and pining over him and the gaslighting. There's more going on. So there's that build up of there's this thing that's gonna come down because you just know something's gonna happen. So I liked that in the I think certain actors did a good job, and I know that this is a little bit kind of comparison, but they literally were acting. If you read the book, they're doing exactly what it says in the book. They're the way that Edward's like talking between his teeth, and that's exactly how it's written in the book. And the way she's all, it's exactly how it's written. So they were directed to do these things. It's just that's how it's written. And as someone with hyperphantasia, I pictured it one way, and I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that's what it was actually going to look like.
I did
like my sparkles were better in my head.
I think everyone's sparkles were better than the first movie. I don't even know if is it the second? No, it's not this. I think it's the third movie where I like the sparkles best, but like each movie they kept refining it. And I'm like, dude, like the same way they kept redoing the wolves. I'm like, stop.
It's like, let me explain to you what the sparkles look like in my head so you can mimic that, because this is not it.
I do have to say my favorite scene that they adapt, and I feel like this was directly from the book to the movie, was where when he's gone for 3 months and they have that camera angle that spins around her. I think that was beautiful.
No, I thought that was
Isn't that in
moon.
book 2? That's in movie 2.
Book 2? My bad.
Yeah,
that's when he
that
leaves
was
and she's
beautiful.
depressed
I
forever.
agree, but I was holding off on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first book takes place in a month because she comes in March, which is basically the end of the semester, which I don't know. I found a little weird.
Oh, see, yeah,
and then prom.
Yeah.
Is
See,
the ending.
I don't know that kind of stuff because I didn't go to school. So.
Yeah, I'm glad that they shortened all of that in the movie. Like, we didn't have the first dance and then prom, because the first thing was another dance, like a Sadie Hawkins style. So I'm glad that we went right to prom was the big thing. So the whole going out and looking for dresses, all that's for prom. Like the condensing where it needed to be condensed. Yes, that was perfect. And I liked the baseball scene where they're cracking the baseballs and it sounds like thunder. Something about that I also liked. I liked when we got to meet the villains. I agree that James was not imposing at all. She seemed more, even the whole time. Victoria always.
She was always the more dangerous one.
I don't trust her.
She's shifty.
I do have a question. These are vampires, apex predators situation, heightened senses. It's not until the wind blows that they're like, oh, it's a human.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
it was the same way with Bella walking
glass
in front of the fan.
The
I
fan.
think what it is that if someone's already bleeding, they can smell it from whatever. But I don't know. It's like
that makes sense.
I don't think it's as if we're emanating it like hormones all the time. I think it's.
And I think also in the book it was a note about the wind shifting and.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not her direction.
I still don't know
Edward's
why she took her hair down,
posture
though.
changes
How is that
because
gonna
of
make
that, and he basically telegraphs what's happening, and then he's like, "Do I sense some fun to be had?"
The hair coming down makes no sense to me.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, why not put your head up or something?
Her. Doing this does not hide.
Yeah, let me wave my hair.
Because you have oils and stuff in your hair. No.
I know.
I just think of it. Tuck your hair up.
I didn't think of it that way. I thought of it more of like if you see the coloring of someone's face. So
or they're right, because he's always
because she.
I almost said something from Midnight Sun, but like how he's always talking about how she's blushing, and like how he can really see like the blood under her skin.
Yeah.
So I guess.
Yeah, but a hoodie would have been better.
Did she have a hat? She could have just.
She had a baseball cap.
She had a baseball cap that Esme gave her.
Put your head down.
Look down, cover your face so you can't see that you're like
not take your hair down.
And then
just be like that goth vampire that doesn't look at anybody. Keep your head down and just be like mysterious.
I like the behind the scenes of the vampire baseball scene though, because they were talking. The like stunt coordinator was like, and the special effects people were like, you have to catch this glass ball like this so that we can replace it later. And like, I was like, I feel like a vampire could catch it like this and not have their fingers completely curled over it because they're like capable enough, but I guess not.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on casting and acting skills and bringing the characters to life? I already
said mine. Like, I think it was really good. I think
Charlie was the best cast person, in my opinion.
I don't think that anyone is really a bad actor. I feel like they were really acting out exactly how it was written in the book, and maybe that just wasn't a good idea because it looks one way when you're reading it. As someone who's got that hyperphantasia, it looks one way when you're reading it. It looks more sultry or mysterious, but when you're actually acting out, like gritting and talking like this,
like
or
it looks
being
like too much.
Yeah.
I think that's why I didn't like it. Not
like
that they were
stage
bad.
play versus
not that they were bad actors, but like it was like over
like
the
they
top,
were
like,
being
every
directed
emotion,
to do this.
It's the queen in the first Lion Witch in the Wardrobe.
Oh
yeah, it's the queen.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
And
it was
what?
her.
Like
Too much expression and like it was just too much.
Well, it's like young adult fiction. It's like everyone is always leaning against a door and rolling their eyes and or smirking or all three at the same time. And it's like in a book, it's like, okay, maybe you don't notice the same phrase over and over again, or maybe you do. But when you're watching that, you're like, really?
Yeah. I don't know. I do think the casting was actually appropriate for the book, and like you said, the acting was what was written. So maybe they needed a better script
Director.
writer.
Yes.
But the thing is, though, is that I think I'm not going to knock the script adaptation because I do think that they were just bringing the book to life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think a lot of people complain about like when they don't do
It's
that.
the original work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the
Love the
original
original.
work because if you know, if Bella didn't have those mannerisms, they wouldn't have been like, oh, we need to put that in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I just think like as far as like if they're adapting all of those instead of like going for a tone, actually putting in all of the gestures of like, now we need you to bite your lip really hard. You know those the TikToks where it's like, make eye contact. Now look them up and down. Look away. Bite your lip. Now bite it harder.
And then there's the guy that makes fun of all the like Disney movies and stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, this is how we dance.
Yeah.
Like, it's so cringe.
Yeah.
You're like, I didn't think it was a cringe when I first
I mean,
watched
it's basically just reading Kenny Ortega to filth because he did most of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like you said, I mean, the way at the time it's smirk, fold the arms, or what, like the descriptions are just very teenager and stuff, and
Teenager angst.
Yeah.
Can you believe we liked that? I mean, by we, I mean me. I am.
And Margaret, make all the comments that you want. She's like, I
Yeah.
came in late and I'm making all the comments. Go ahead. They're spot on. I love hearing everybody's take on things.
like I'm gonna have to jump on TikTok after this just to get off.
In terms of the other characters, though, I really thought that they did a good job of making them feel like high school students, like Eric and sorry, I'm drawing. I have
It's like
Angela, Jessica,
Eric,
Tyler.
Yeah.
Matt,
or the
Angela,
scene where
Jessica,
they were playing football outside the restaurant, and one of the guys is like shaking his butt. Like that felt like high school to me. So you know, aside from the vampires, aside from Bella, everyone else.
And they actually looked like teenagers. Like we finally found a work-life balance for people who is still in school, because I know there's the child labor laws and stuff like that. But I didn't realize growing up that like the teenagers in high school that I was watching were actually 30
years old.
I think in this one they were all like early 20s or like someone turned 18 while filming. Or
I grew up with Sabrina the Teenage Witch, who was not a teenager. So that was funny when I found out how old she actually was.
Mean Girls,
which
was 30.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
30.
Which I mean, let's just say
Fair.
to call a current one in Bridgerton, Eloise, she's 30.
I know. She's
Also, Moaning Myrtle was like, I want to say 40.
Yes.
I know that freaked me out. Given
that's
the
weird.
bathtub scene that they have, you know, in the Goblet of Fire, where I'm like,
Man, you've got depth.
Which, like, I think their skincare routine, please.
A fun fact that I read is that Henry Cavill was originally going to play Edward. When she had like imagined the casting, that's who she wanted. But by the time they got to actually doing the movie, he was already 25. Yeah. So they went with a totally different direction, which I thought was a good choice.
I mean, I would have
towered over Bella.
Instead of
I look at him and I would have been like Emmett.
Yeah,
not Edward. Because they always talk. Maybe it's in Twilight. I definitely know in the later books, like they always talk about the different builds. Like Jasper's like the most like waif-like, but then you have, you know, Edward who's like slim, and then you have Emmett who's just like a beast, and it's like
Emmett's a linebacker.
Yeah.
Emmett wrestles with bears for fun. Like,
so I think we should get into comparisons.
That's what I was getting ready to do. I want to do.
There is one comparison that, even though in this like fourth reread I didn't get through, that is just driving me crazy. But for you people that love the movie, this is going in your favor. And for me, it's Charlie. In the book, where Charlie is talking to Bella, like I like him. He's like, listen, like he seems like this simple bachelor where like he's probably fine with a ham sandwich every single day, probably has his routine. He went fishing and he didn't change his routine, and because his daughter, she's 16, she's not going to burn the house down. The part that rubbed me the wrong way in the book, and it's because I love Charlie in the movie, because in the movie, let's rehash this. In the movie, Charlie is cleaning his gun like I say Southern, but they're in Washington. 2 seconds, buddy. Otherwise, I'll forget this. In the movie, he's cleaning his gun, and Bella's like, hey, I want you to meet my boyfriend, Edward. And he's like, all right. And the men. And I'm like, yes. Like, that was perfect. That is the Charlie I want. In the book, it is Charlie that says, oh, you think you think everyone likes Edward? You're really going to like Dr. Cullen. All the nurses love it. I'm like, what father would sit here and have a conversation with his daughter about how cute everyone thinks another guy? Like, no, every father with their daughter is going.
Also, Dr. Cullen is older, you know?
Yes.
It's like,
yes.
It's not like, being like, oh, like if you, like all the girls swoon after Edward, like maybe go for one of his other siblings who isn't already paired up or something. Like, I don't know.
That's
getting caught up
in
like
something that should have been said by one of the teenage friends.
Yes.
I
did like in the
for older guys who was like, oh yeah, the dad.
I did like in the book though that Charlie stood up for the Cullens. He's like, listen, I didn't like them, but they are the one group of kids that I have never had any issues with, and I thought that was a great touch.
I think they say that in the movie too at one point though.
Okay, but like I said, that Dr. Carlisle.
I think they're at the diner, and it's actually the scene where Stephanie Meyer has a cameo.
Oh, yeah, where
she's at the counter writing Breaking Dawn at that point, Eclipse, whatever, and she told the directors, like, just make sure they can't read my screen, because I think that was after the first 3 chapters of Midnight Sun had already been leaked, which I read in the leaked version. She didn't change those, by the way, to the published version that came out like a decade later after the leak. But she's asking, she's like, hey, like, what do you know about the Cullens? Because everyone at school says they're super weird. And then he goes into the, like, Dr. Cullen's a good guy. Never had any problems from his kids. So I'm pretty sure that's also in the movie.
I think movie Charlie is, I mean, honestly, I think we talked about this in another setting, but how, like, a lot of times the character's parents have already been killed off. And it's like you don't often get to see like a role model parent character,
or a good parent.
Yeah, and like there's definitely areas where Charlie doesn't get it right, but also you think about the limited experience and opportunity he's had to parent. I feel like he does a really good job. He like gets her a vehicle so she can go to school. He like, you know, makes sure it's maintained. He goes to buy her new stuff for her room, and he's like, I don't know, the lady said purple was good, I guess. So, like, I loved that scene. I thought that
he shows an effort. He's trying.
Yeah, he does. He really does. And throughout the whole movie, I feel like you really get that Charlie, the very best version of Charlie, regardless of how you imagine him from the book. And I love that. But also through to the end where you see that even that fathers have feelings, where she uses the whole thing that her mom said. Yeah. However, this does bring up, in my opinion, a plot hole. How does she know the exact words that her mother said to her father when she left?
Was she 4?
I mean, that feels like a story that parents would tell.
4, though.
Yeah.
Were they the exact same words, or was it just hitting below the belt and like going after the same problem that she needed?
I felt like it was said that it was like those are the exact words.
I said the same thing my mother said when she left or something like that.
I didn't remember that specific. So, I mean, how old were she when they?
I thought
they were like 19 or something like that.
That seems like something that her parents might have just mentioned in a story too. Like,
I could see her mom.
You could argue about it. You know, as a separation, they're talking on the phone. Maybe she kept hearing it. Also, sometimes a traumatic event.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it's a traumatic thing, and she probably heard them arguing.
Yeah,
and those words.
But I mean, like, that wasn't really spelled out, and I'm like, first of all, like, if that is the case, then like Renee just even goes so like there's like a bar that's very, very low, and she just goes like way under the bar.
Yeah.
Or like, how do you let your kid hear that kind of
But
thing?
like we know she's
relatable, though.
That's my
irresponsible.
childhood right there.
I mean, I know, because like, yeah, but
can
at the
attest
same
to that.
time, from the character's perspective, that not being their breakup not really being brought forward, I felt like it wasn't super clear how exactly she knew exactly the words that her mom said. So I would have liked to have that, but I mean that wasn't super clear in the book, but also.
But I don't think there would have been a place for her to say it. I mean, I guess she could have told
it could've
Edward in
been-
the car when they're driving away, but like.
Yeah. Even I think early on in the beginning montage, you know, in her head when she's doing the drive and she's talking about how she hadn't been there since she'd only been there for a couple of weeks a year, but she hadn't lived there since she was 4. I think it was when she was 4 that she could have said, "Oh, this is the place that my mom." I remember those words my mom said. You know, I don't want to be stuck here, and now here I am going. You know what I mean? If she'd have like mentioned it, then it would have been like a callback, and then we would know. Oh, as her mom was leaving, she remembers this.
Yeah,
That would have been really good writing.
I think that would have been better writing, but honestly, like it didn't strike me as a problem because I think it's Charlie's reaction that sells it for me, and I'm just like, okay, moving on.
For sure, but then Edward does follow up by saying that was the only way he would have let you go.
Right.
And he says he'll forgive you. I'm in the part in the book.
Yeah.
He doesn't say. So the thing that she says that really sells it is, I don't want to end up trapped in this stupid, boring town like Mom. I'm not going to make the same dumb mistake she did. I hate it. I can't stand here another minute.
I think that's almost word for word what they put in the movie. I know that I'm not going to make the same mistake Mom did.
The book doesn't say that's what Mom said. The movie says that because, because at that point, she said, it didn't work out okay. I really, really hate forks later. And then she says, my cruel words did their job. Charlie stayed frozen on the step, stunned while I ran into the night.
Yeah.
And then she goes, I'll call you tomorrow. As she leaves. And then, of course, she drives and Edward pops into the window because he can just pop anywhere.
Yeah, just pop in and scoot her over.
When she's driving and there's like the
Mid-drive.
trunk, and then all of a sudden he's climbing in, I was like, that must have been fun to film.
So either way, yeah. But I think it was the movie. I remember in the movie I said the same thing, or I said,
or it's like my mom said the same thing. Or
yeah.
whatever.
So
Yeah.
either way,
Yeah. There were a lot of differences, and I think for me the differences are what made me like the book better than the movie. Like I said, the condensing of all.
You mean the movie better than the book?
Oh yeah, the movie better than the book. The condensing of all those long chapters and chapters of the pining, the fact that they shrunk that up, that they took away one of the dances and we went straight for prom. Like it wasn't necessary. That would have just made the movie drag out, I think, if they'd have tried to do it that way. And I like that we got introduced to Jacob and his dad at the beginning, that they're the ones that delivered the truck. So that was a very clever way to introduce them early on. You know,
versus like being around the fire in the book, and it's like, oh yeah, hey, I'm Jacob. Our dads are friends.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know you.
that was kind of awkward.
I mean, you still have the like, I don't really remember you, but at least it's like not in this, oh, it's supposed to be super dramatic and you're having this like really awkward conversation.
Yeah. So then when they actually have conversations, you get the feeling that they've known each other a little bit, you know, longer. And you get that part where she's like, I wish that he was going to be in school so that I would know someone going in. That would, you know, those are add-ins to the movie that I actually liked. Nobody wanted your opinion, Loki.
You're going to pay for that comment later.
I am, because now he's like, oh yeah?
This isn't a change because it's not something that they could really do from the book to the movie, but I really like when they're in the Cullen house when they're walking up the stairs and she's like graduation caps, and the joke is like we matriculate a lot. Like I like that they're a little bit more tongue-in-cheek about being vampires, like once she's let in, whereas I feel like in the books they're still very like, but we still can't say anything type of thing, except for the baseball thing, because it's like this will be fun, like no one's gonna know, and like it's not like you can actually keep up with us, so like it's fine.
But it also proves by having the graduation caps that nobody outside the family is ever in that house. Because that would be kind of hard to explain.
Right. And she's like, you have like open windows, and he's like, we don't like have visitors. So it like doesn't matter.
One really cool thing. Sorry. Go ahead, Morgan.
Oh, I was going to say another change from the book to the movie was how she found out that they were vampires. Because in the book, Jacob told her outright, like on the beach. And then in the movie, it was like cryptic, like, oh, they were just another rival clan. And we said, oh, just stay off our land and then we won't tell the world about you. But he didn't really say what they were, what the legend was. And then in the book, he told her everything basically. So I don't know how I felt about that change. I felt like they were trying to make Bella a little bit smarter because in my head, I think Bella's kind of like,
that was good.
Really really, I don't want to say she's dumb, but like,
well, I mean, she's very good at the onion biology thing. So I think it's just adding like, she's not an idiot. Except when
like common sense. She's smart, but she doesn't have any common sense.
Exactly.
They were trying to make her smarter, like, oh, I figured it out. They're vampires, instead of Jacob just telling her.
But also, can we talk about like how crazy in movies it's like you search something and then boom, exactly what you're looking for. Top thing, like
you're not the only one.
But she in the book though, she still had to go to the store because she was looking for that specific copy of the book. So
which I liked.
And then there's also the whole like, how else do we get her in this really dangerous situation where her like being directionally challenged comes up again. But Ben, you were gonna say something?
Oh no, that was my exact point. Is I like how the movie made her smarter, and that was one of the most proactive things that she does in the movie, and they gave her that agency.
Yes, agency, because she didn't have it.
Yes. One thing that I felt translated really badly to the movie, when she's getting rescued and Edward pulls up in the car and he's growling at the guys to back up.
That's not good.
You don't understand that he's the one who's growling. You're like, is that the car? Whereas in the book, it's so clear that Bella's like, he's growling. And then that's added on to like her
he just pulled up and said, "Get in."
You're like, what is this sound effect all of a sudden? And they're like backing up. It's like one dude, and you don't, because if you don't understand from the book that he, the vampire, is growling, you'd be like, why are these like super bulky guys backing off? They'd be like, we can take you. Like we're 4-3.
So let's just face it. If someone growls at me, I don't back up. I just look at them and go, what the hell are you doing?
Well, I think it's supposed to be that vampires sound like really animalistic. So it sounds more like a bear or lion or whatever growl. It's not like a human growling.
Okay.
But it's still like, if you don't understand what's happening, you hear the sound effect and you're like, excuse me, what?
You know what I thought it was in the movie? I just thought it was car noises.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
But if you think about it from what you were saying, it sounds like you guys like what are you doing?
I have a question.
Also, I think in the movie she's already in the car when he's growling, so she wouldn't know that. Whereas in the book, I think she hears him and then he snaps at her to get in the car.
Yeah. Question. When they were driving back, was that in the book where Charlie's friend died and that she stops and he leaves her there with Charlie? I didn't think so.
That's not in the book, but I did like it because
I don't remember that.
No, but I like that it built on the relationship between her and her dad, but then also like she sees Dr. Cullen leaving like with the people in the ambulance or something, and it shows like there is a relationship between like her father as like the head of chief of police and Dr. Cullen. So it like reinforces the earlier thing where he's like, yeah, Dr. Cullen's a good man, and so both working, and then she sees the look that Dr. Cullen gives Edward because they obviously know it's a vampire attack, but her dad doesn't see it, and she's like just seeing all these things. So I like that. It offered more.
I'm going to have to rewatch this part, and someone refresh my memory, but does Charlie shake Carlisle's hand there?
I think so.
No.
I think so.
Because his hand would be really cold and it wouldn't have
Because
been
I watched it last night.
Yeah.
I wanted to see.
No, I think he
Oh,
does, but he's probably like, oh, he's a doctor. He's constantly like washing his hands or using like
Yeah.
antiseptic or something.
Or like me,
So,
my
like,
hands are
my
always
question,
cold.
like,
I don't know if they're
He never
vampire
touches
cold, but-
patients because they would know his hands are really cold. But anyway.
I don't know,
but
like
he,
the way
he could be like, oh, it's the stethoscope.
Yeah.
He could like put
Like,
it
it's
off on
fine.
like, oh, it's all the metal instruments. I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah.
or
I'm
just
so
came in
glad-
from outside.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we only decided to do just Twilight, the first book,
Oh,
and
gosh.
the second.
There's too much.
We need
Like,
to.
We're this far in and we're not done yet. So yeah.
All right, let's quickly. Do we want to do worst or best changes? What do we want to do first?
Worst
Worst
changes
changes?
first.
Worst.
Worst first? Okay.
Yeah.
Guys,
It
starting
rhymes.
with Natalie, we'll go around. What was your thoughts on the worst change?
So worst change, I actually felt that having like diminishing the characters, like, okay, let me put it this way. I figured it out. Twilight as an individual movie to the book, not the franchise, was not good because we lost that the other characters, and which we got a little bit more of Bella in her interaction with Jessica and Angela. And like Angela had a lot of character. Like Bella was able to get some questions from Angela that she was afraid to ask Jessica because Jessica would be all judgy, like, why are you asking this? Or why are you interested, huh? You know, and like ask more questions. Whereas Angela was just like, oh yeah, this. And we'd start off the answer without judgment. And we lost that interaction with these side characters. And yes, at least Anna Kendrick rose up from this. But those other characters, we didn't get anything. Now, as a whole, because we did get those characters in the later movies, cool, I can understand taking them a little bit out of this one. But like I actually enjoyed the interactions and such. The number one change that gets me every time between the book and the movie that pisses me off is in the book, Jacob is a whiny child who thinks he's entitled just because he likes Bella that he should get a chance. He is that nice guy that goes, give me a chance, give me a chance. Like, dude, I'm not even attracted to you like that. Like, I'm just sorry, I'm not. You can't make me. Well, give me a try. You know,
but
try
they
it
were
out. You
trying
big
to
girl.
like create teams, and then it's like you don't really get.
And I hate
Like,
teams
well, it's not even
because
a
I'm
spoiler,
like,
but
the
you
books are
get
written.
you get whiny Jacob and Eclipse the movie, but you get whiny Jacob like throughout.
It's whiny Jacob. He is a child. Like, I don't care that he gets ripped later or whatever. But then the movies come out and he's cute and he's not as whiny. He's not as entitled. And it's like, oh, I want Jacob. Okay, first off, there's no teams. The books are written. Stop choosing
I know,
sides,
but
okay? Like,
but people
you're
don't
trying to
always
fight.
read the book before the movie. They wanted to get, they knew it was a marketing ploy. Where they're, all of the posters were her and the two guys. Shadow and Bone did it too, and like
I just Jacob, that people would watch the movies alone, see Jacob, and go, "Oh, I
people
would
also
also
did it in Hunger Games, and it's like if you've read the books, you're like, I'm sorry, there's not actually a triangle, but it's nice try.
Yeah, but no, it just pisses me off when you have bad flaws in a character that make them not appealing, but then you remove those flaws for the movie and go, oh yeah, Team Jacob, Team Edward. I'm like, no, you're not getting the full picture. If you were just watching the movies, I'm not arguing with you.
Because it's tricking people. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my biggest pet peeve because it created that whole dynamic, and it was a marketing scheme. Cool, bravo to them for their marketing. Like they've done it with like mayonnaise and stuff of whose side are you on situation. Pepsi and Coke, whose side are you on? Like, it is a marketing ploy. It is proven, but by God, it's like trying to argue with facts, but you still don't know the truth. To pull in Flash Fiction yesterday a little bit, you got the facts, but you still don't know the truth. And it,
Like, you don't have the full picture.
yeah,
Because you can have facts and still draw the wrong conclusion if you don't have all the facts.
and that's where the truth is. The truth is the conclusion, the actual how the facts are connected, the context and stuff. And the people who just watched the movies and were like, Team Jacob, and I'm like, I'm not talking to you. I'm not wasting my breath. Fine.
Yeah.
You could just be like, read the books and then get back to me.
Yeah.
That's probably what I would have said.
Bye. And everything.
What
I
about
don't
you,
and someone looking cute does not absolve them from being an asshole. Sorry to cuss, but
That's true.
that's my biggest soapbox. So.
I agree
That's a
with
good
you
one.
pretty much on everything there. The consolidation of all of or a lot of the female characters into Jessica, I feel like was a loss for this movie. And I feel like we also didn't get very much in the movie of her spending time with her friends.
Yeah.
And that was also a loss. There wasn't a lot of it to begin with. So completely removing that was basically severing her last connection with really the human world. And I don't think that was super helpful, especially not that early in the series, which is kind of a sidebar. But then on the, I mean, yeah, I really don't like the whole Team Jacob piece either. I felt like that was huge. It was like he was so it did. You were right. It did make him more likable in the movie, and he wasn't that. It was an entire misrepresentation, in my opinion. And although there's some aspects of him that he does have a lot of interesting parts as a character, but I don't think those were really emphasized. And I thought it was more of like, how can we turn him into a heartthrob? And I no, thank you.
Ben, you're up.
Sure. So my biggest problem is that in streamlining the movie from the book, like you mentioned, it consolidated her friendships. And there were some scenes in the book where I was reading, and I'm like, wow, Bella's really a terrible friend. And in the movie, it was so much more apparent. Like the two girls that were shopping for dresses, they were, having fun. They were going back and forth with each other. And then there's just Bella sort of sitting in the corner. And like when they ask her a question, she's just not even paying attention.
Yeah.
And then
now I feel like a shitty friend.
Yeah.
No, I don't think you're wrong. Please don't take it that way at all.
Okay, sure. But it's also that like there were so many other scenes where it was her friends sort of talking around her, and then she would just be staring at Edward. And yeah, in the books it sort of expanded a little bit more and shows, you had a little bit more back and forth. But here it's just so quick that we don't get that context. And then sort of building off on that, there's a lot of scenes. I just have a note that there were a lot of scenes where her and Edward or people were just laughing at things that weren't funny. And there's a lot of nervous laughter to sort of just have something going on. And it just became too much. So in trying to streamline it, there was, the pendulum swings the other way. And it was, they could have done more to develop the characters.
Yeah.
Yep.
I agree. And to your point on the not being a good friend, though, where I was kind of making the joke, because I do carry books and start reading when people I'm around are boring me. If that's not the intention to like have that be part of the character's personality, where like, oh, she always has her nose in a book. We know that about her, and it's one of her quirks, and we still love her, which is how I hope my friends take me.
Yeah, your friends expect it. They know.
And also, those are your friends. Like, she's known these people for maybe a month.
But
and that's where we don't get that. What you're talking about, we don't get. They've removed all the other friends.
Yeah,
for one character, and so we don't see her interacting with her friends at all. It's just her being a shitty friend.
But I feel like in the movie they peg her much more as an outsider, because even though they want to immediately enfold her in, and they're like, oh, can we interview you for the school newspaper? Like, you should do this and all these things. And she's like overwhelmed because she's never been someone to have a lot of friends, it seems, even when she was in Phoenix. And then she comes here. So like they are trying to be friends. And I think Jessica's a little bit less genuine than I already forgot her name. Thank you, Angela. I'm like, it's not Ashley.
Because there's
Angela,
that jealousy
like
over
wanting
her.
to actually include her, but we like I feel like in the movie you know that she's a loner, and even her friends like understand that she's obsessed with like the Coens because they'll catch her like staring at the empty table or when they are there. So like even though she dips out to go to the bookstore where like it's being a bad friend, and they see that it's weird, but I do think it's keeping in her character in the movie maybe more than it is like in the book, where it's not that she's a loner, it's just that she's a shitty friend.
Yeah.
In the book.
But yeah, and I feel I'll get to mine. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying, Ben. And yeah, sometimes it just got streamlined a little bit too much. So you just literally they just popped into the scene and she's reading a book and they're all look at this trying to, and she's just like, yeah, whatever.
She's like, I'm gonna go.
Yeah. She never tried on a dress, did she?
No.
And she had one at the end. So how'd that happen?
Edward knows her exact size.
Yeah,
oh, that's right. But that should have been Alice too.
Yeah, because Alice should have helped her get ready for the prom. I think that happened in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were trying to streamline and get right to the gazebo scene.
Yeah.
How about you, Morgan? What were your worst changes? I know you didn't like it either. So.
I don't think I had any specific worst changes. I agree with everything you said about like her friends and on the team. I mean, I think I was Team Jacob even before there was like teams. But and as the books got on, I kind of fell off of liking him. But yeah, that's all I'll say.
I think that's valid. That's very valid.
I agree.
I think building off of like all the things about not being with her friends as much, I think that even with the condensing, you could have had her with her friends more and not all just like, oh, they're talking in the background and it's muted and she's staring at the table. I do want her to be interacting with them more, or like in class or things like that. Because lunch is not the only time that she's seeing them. We know that she has gym class with all of them. When she bonked like Nat in the head, which was very funny the way they filmed it, by the way. But it's like because we barely see her with them. When Edward is like, I don't want you to leave behind your humanity, when they're arguing about it during their dance at prom in the gazebo, and she's like, but like I don't have anything. It's like, yeah, we know you don't have anything tying you to your humanity. Why does Edward think you do?
Yeah.
So it's like it needed to be more of an actual debate. And there isn't, because she's 100% wrapped up in Edward completely in the movie.
So to fix both of the issues that, oh my gosh, why?
Which way did he go?
Both of the issues that y'all mentioned, though, if you cut out all of the awkward laughing and replace that with actual human interaction with her friends, 2 problems solved.
That would solve my worst change problem too, because I also agree that when they condensed her friends, they did. Part of it is that they condensed her friends. Not only did they condense her friends, they took out a lot of the friendship bonding. And then you have these awkward scenes where you have, I want to go shopping with you, but I'm not going to pay attention to anything and now I'm going to I'm just going to go to this bookstore. They ate without her, which happens in both, because they're thinking, oh, she doesn't really care about us anyway. They're not concerned or looking.
Well, they were hungry and they were tired of waiting
so
for her. I don't think it was like they didn't care about it, but they're like, okay, let's eat. Then we'll find her.
With another guy, like, no, I don't care if I know who you are. I'm like,
well,
no,
they weren't.
Look, my friend.
Like them, they were saying like, hey, like we got hungry and we got tired of waiting. It's like, okay, that's understandable, but also this is a new girl in a town and it's dark. So like that's not good friendship either.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
So we should call them on that. Let's call a spade a spade.
Let's go to your favorite changes. Let's see. My favorite change, I think I've already mentioned that I liked the streamlining in that because we get more action early on. So that was the best thing that that mystery of who are these other people that are coming in killing people, and you see them being picked off, you know, the warehouse worker, security person, then Charlie's friend. So there's a buildup. We know something's coming. I think that was probably the best change, and I liked meeting the Blacks early on. So to me, those were the best changes. We can go clockwise, Zara.
I don't really have anything else to add to that.
Me either.
Anybody else best change from book to, because then we'll do final thoughts and wrap it up. Oh my gosh.
I mean, we talked about the best changes, I think, through this whole
the best
thing.
change was more Charlie.
Like more of the world.
I love me some Charlie.
Yeah.
More Charlie and more of the world. Minus everything we just said about her friends getting the shaft when it came.
Yeah, and the cut. They kind of got
Yeah.
stiff in the cut. That's unfortunate. All right, final thoughts, guys. Final thoughts as we wrap up Twilight.
I would love to see the book being properly edited.
There's
And
an author tuber who was rewriting Twilight. Like, I stumbled across their videos and they were doing it like chapter by chapter, like how I am going to edit this.
Yeah, I think to see that would be not just really fun, but also where the characters and their flaws are pointed out in a way where we know this isn't being romanticized. Like, these are just flawed people, characters, and here's some good editing. You're welcome.
I don't think they're ever going to do that, though.
No, for sure not. But I'm just saying in
wishful thinking.
Yeah, I would like to see that.
Yeah, something where she's like, I like this guy and this, but he's totally gaslighting. Like, she recognizes, and then he's got to acknowledge, I know I was gaslighting you. This is why. Sorry about that. But I was confused, or I didn't know what to do. Like, some explanation, some acknowledgement.
I do feel like in the movie, though, she's like, no, like, you're lying. I know this is true. Like, there is more pushback.
Yes.
Which, by the way, her research in the movie, can we just say, like, that montage went by too quick. Like, it would have, like, research for stuff, like, to get the exact words. It would have not been that easy to find the stuff.
I think
you type cold ones in. Why wasn't there like packages of meat on there when you type cold one? Okay.
Again, it's early 2000s. There was no internet. There was like just a tiny little internet.
Yeah. I think it would be really cool to have like a clock next to it, so you can just see, like, even though she's like doing things in real time and it looks like it's normal speed, that the clock is just like ticking really fast.
Yeah,
that would have been really cool.
Yeah, so you can see how long research
actually. And then also that would have kind of matched the chair spin scene in the second movie, where it's like we're seeing an action in normal time, but then through editing we know that it's not.
Yeah.
And there's ways to edit clocks to spin that fast. So it could have been an easy, like, 5-minute recording and done.
Yeah. Good editor to edit that in. Any other thoughts, guys? Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up. I'm so relieved. I really thought might have a one-sided.
No, I love this one. Like, I'm glad we are grabbing stories that we're not all like, it's great, and that we all have different opinions. Yeah. And I'm excited to get more stories like this where it's a little more charged. Because we're adults and we can talk it through, but I am still, if you're team anything, no, we're done. We're good.
Honestly, I like most about I was going to say, I like most about this how the story has kind of changed, where when it first came out, everyone was like, I want to be in a relationship like Edward and Bella. And now we kind of realize that, that's maybe not the most healthiest thing to strive for. And so that's opening up conversations like this.
Yeah, I like that too. And that even when we're writing these things, we can acknowledge and be like, okay, we're writing this thing, but guys, this is toxic. You don't want this.
Yeah.
Any Thomas Hardy novel, like a lot of things, any Bronte novel, it's like you have things that are considered classics and people are like, oh my God, it's so good. And I'm like, all of these people are awful.
Yeah.
Or like their relationship is toxic. And it's like,
I'm
You
glad
can
you brought
read
that
it.
up because I love Thomas Hardy, and yeah, I do.
That doesn't surprise me though, so that's okay.
It doesn't surprise me, but part of me wants to I'm concerned.
You should be.
I am.
No, but I mean, I like the tragedy aspect, so I think that also probably comes through in the way that I feel about Twilight and all of that. I don't really go for this is healthy, happily ever after, because a lot of me, I don't believe in that, which may be sad and kind of might reference how jaded I am. But
speaking of classics, though, Twilight was based on Pride and Prejudice, and New Moon was based on Romeo and Juliet. And what was Eclipse and New Virgin Dawn based on?
no, it wasn't.
That's what that was said in an interview, and I was like,
no, it wasn't. I don't know if y'all watched Kayla and Alan, but the lies you tell.
No, but I read that in an interview, and I was like, the closest that this got to Pride and Prejudice was that it's enemies to lovers in a little bit, and then okay, New Moon and Romeo and Juliet is because they're studying it in school, and Edward gets called on because he's talking to Bella in class, and the teacher's like, recite Romeo's last soliloquy, and then he just does it perfectly because he's been alive for 100 and what years.
Yeah, right on that. It's how often do we talk about, this is so, why are we thinking it's okay? This old vampire. And I'm like, wait, I do love the Bronte sisters and everything. Jane Eyre was a thing for over a century. It's
oh yeah,
we've been doing this.
Twilight turned me off to Wuthering Heights.
But I've never seen
I would rather I read Wuthering Heights before Twilight, which is also maybe why I had issues with it going into Twilight.
Yeah.
But then what's really funny, different fandom completely. But Ben Barnes and Jessie Mae Lee were told by the director to watch the Michael Fassbender Jane Eyre to get their dynamic in Shadow and Bone, and everyone is like, you can't tell me that was their homework and not tell me that this is
what they're trying to make us ship that.
First of all, I do. That is a great adaptation. Love it. Y'all can probably see that I have damage. It's fine. Don't even worry about me. But in regard to Twilight being based off of Pride and Prejudice, if they're trying to equate Edward being a vampire with Darcy not communicating about Wickham, you way missed the mark, because that was not that would be private family business.
The mark in this comparison.
Yeah, because that would be private family business. He had no reason to tell you something that happened to his sister. You don't have a right to know that. So it's not the same as you being an actual predator and not revealing that to someone you haven't. Anyway, yeah, it's not the same. We are not the same.
All right, we have to close it down because we have gone. I always tell people we're going about an hour and a half, but no more than 2 hours. We are literally at the 2 hour, and we could be here all day. Yes, Shannon. We're on different likes. You are not a boring person, though, Shannon. But yeah, we're going to like different things. So I really enjoyed having this discussion. So thank you guys. We're going to do quick outros, starting with Zara. We'll swing it around and I will close it out. Go ahead, Zara.
My name is Zara Hoffman. I'm the self-published author of 6 books, a young adult paranormal romance trilogy, which may or may not include some of the tropes that we bashed today, but I was in high school.
You at least have consent of Belgrave. I can attest
that
to
is
that.
True. Yes. There's a lot more strife and hey, I think I'm doing a bad thing. I don't know if I should continue doing the bad thing to the person I love. And a new adult sci-fi romance trilogy. And I am the co-creator, co-host, and editor of the Rightish podcast. And I am now the founder and publisher of Inimitable Books, which is dedicated to uplifting marginalized voices without forcing said marginalized authors to write about their trauma.
Excellent.
And my name is Morgan Lee. I have a channel here on YouTube. I normally post 2 times a week. I do this, scripting the book, And I also do the self-publishing tips and tricks podcast with Shannon and Ben. We have an episode coming out today at 4 p.m. Central. If you want to check it out, we interviewed DL Tillery. And that's about it.
All right. And I am Ben Pick. I post videos to YouTube as Running to Write every Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. And like Morgan said, I also do the self-publishing tips and tricks. And I hope to see you here next time, there, whenever. So take care.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chandra Arthur. I write historical fiction, science fiction, and fantasy. I'm also half of Flash Fiction Live, which you can catch at 8:30 a.m. on Saturday mornings. I just got out of school, so hopefully I'll be posting more videos again soon. And I like to float around and do things like this and just, be in different places. So, yeah.
You said float around, and it made me think of that. I want to be a marshmallow. Just wobble around. Just wobble with joy. Okay. So I am the other half of Flash Fiction Live. We just did Flash Fiction Live this yesterday, Saturday at 8:30 on my channel. So the next one will be on Chandra's channel. Oh, I pointed in the right direction. It's a win. And my channel, Twitch, YouTube, and Instagram is just like all Flash fiction stuff. So because of that, I get to genre hopscotch all the time. So it's fun. And I do scripting the book, which is one of the few things that keeps me reading. I pretty much only read for scripting the book and for beta reading. That's about it. I don't do reading outside of that.
My job here is done. And thank you guys for coming. If you are wanting to join us for scripting the book, we're going to be doing one episode in the summer. That way everybody can do the vacations and things. I can tell you our next one at the end of the month, we are doing The Devil Wears Prada. So if you're interested in joining us for that, message me or one of my fantastic co-hosts, and we will definitely book you on. And in June, we are going to do Sanditon's, which will be very interesting because it's an unfinished work by Jane Austen, celebrating the month that we lost her, and got this unfinished work that did not get done, and the adaptation what has come of it. And so if you'd like to join us for that, that will be in June. And we will keep you posted on what is coming up. I also host Author Tubers React, which you can join me for next Saturday. Zara Hoffman is one of my co-hosts on that one. And at the end of the month, if you're a writer, join us for the Writer's Wrap-Up. If you have something that you want to promote, if you need help with something, just you need some encouragement, join us for the Writer's Wrap-Up. We're going to be on Sarah Cahill's channel next month. And I think we're probably over the summer, we'll do one on Chandra's channel. Because I've got a wedding and stuff coming up. So be looking out for that. Follow everybody and you'll know all the things and what's coming up. I really appreciate you guys coming and doing this with me. It's always a lot of fun. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being in the chat. And we're going to say bye-bye.